Welcome, LBI family. We're so excited that you're here with us. And today, in another podcast, we have one of my great friends, Raquel Vega. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
You know what? We can go everywhere. Like, there's many routes that we can go. But one of the things that I have to say, we graduated in 2012 together. We were in the same generation here in LBI. And one of the things that I always remember, one, I'm afraid to speak English in front of you because you always make fun of me. The second thing is that you were in the room when I actually say yes to Jesus. We didn't even meet. We met like months after, but I think that was something that has always been embedded in my heart. So I know that we've been friends for about a decade already.
Yeah,
It's been a long time.
that's a while.
Yeah. So how are you?
I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm happy to be here. Um, just back to the place that back to my crib. Not like cribs like MTV cribs, but like crib, in the sense of a place that nurtured me and my walk with God. So, it's good.
What are you doing right now?
Well, right now I am focusing a lot on music, writing, working a lot on my craft, learning how to use like Logic, making beats, like every
Yeah.
other person
You
out here.
you make up the next DJ Khaled of
I will be
Christian
the
music?
next DJ. No, give me a woman DJ.
Um,
Dang, I can't think of any.
well, that's bad.
All right, it's gonna be me.
Yeah.
I call next. Yeah, it's been really good. Being a full time mom has been one of the joys of my life. Getting to see my daughter grow and she's amazing. She's here right now. She's watching.
She's super smart.
She's watching Blippy. So
Yeah,
shout out to
she's
Blippy.
concentrated over there.
Yeah.
So what is before we jump into the whole conversation we have? What is the things that you remind yourself or you remember the most about LFBI? Maybe an experience, maybe something, friendships. I
Yeah.
don't know.
I wish I could say like the camaraderie, but I was not the best at being open. I liked my space. So apologies to everybody who's watching this, and maybe Raquel was just a little
I'm
bit
still
closed
offended
off.
by
Oh,
that.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
Definitely chapel experiences were some of the highlights, um, and and also every time we ever got to do anything missions oriented,
Mm-hmm.
those
Yeah.
were really cool. And then the human video practices that
Oh
we
my
had in
god.
classroom 5 till like 2 a.m.
We will. Yeah. It was a
Those
long.
were fun.
They were fun.
Antonio was the human video
How I don't know.
leader, and he would come up with these
You know,
elaborate dramas.
now that I watched the drama, I was like, how do people understand what I was trying to communicate? Like, I don't even understand myself what I was trying to communicate.
All I know is that every time you asked me to be in a human video, I was either
I
the
didn't even ask
adulterous
you.
woman, the woman with the blood flow. I'm like,
Hey, look,
can I win?
Look,
Like,
you're broken. So
I am
you're
broken. But dude,
I
I
don't
was
even ask
like,
you. I was like, hey, you're gonna be part of this. You're just gonna do this.
those were fun moments.
Hey, they were fun.
They were
I
fun,
love it.
and they were cardio because we would sweat in
Oh,
that
we would
classroom.
carry people. We would just flip everything. It
Yeah.
was fun. You know what? I'm so excited to have you here because I don't want to boast about you, but I want to boast about you at the same time because I know that um, I seen you grow for the past decade. You have been able to be in spaces and rooms where many of us would just probably dream about being. In proximity with certain people that are known. And I don't want to throw names, but I know that some people know, uh, and I think that one of the gifts that you have is worship. Your ability, your sense, and your awareness to take people into the presence of God, and even your voice. I know I can sing better than you, but even your voice,
Bet.
it's just amazing. So I want to talk about worship. I want to talk about worship, and I want to talk about worship because I think we are in a season of life because of the pandemic, because everything that's happening. I think many of us we find ourselves in conflict because of the lack of certain things, and I just want to know what you experienced to this point when it comes down to that.
Yeah. If I can say something about it, something that can just summarize what worship more specifically, music worship. There are many avenues of worship, right? Like worship is a lifestyle. We always say that, and music just happens to be one of the tools that we use to express and communicate. Um, that has been the constant in my life since I was very young. So um, I've had this phrase, and I think it's from a song. Um, Praise is the highway to the heart of God. So every time I found myself adrift or lost or confused or doubting, or even just like numb, my personality tends to go numb when I am overwhelmed. Um, I just have to put on a worship song, or sing some lyrics out that I'm feeling in in regards to how I feel about God, and it always brings me back. So worship has been a constant in my life, and I'm really thankful for it. Um, I think you're probably already guessing it. We're going to talk about 2020. Um,
Right.
we're barely starting March, and I'm still not over 2020. Okay,
It's 2020 part two.
I'm holding a little bit of resentment towards 2020, but we're gonna move on in Jesus' name. 2020 was definitely a year where I think Tonyo, you put it in such a really great way when we were talking before this. Um, 2020 caused everything to be like it stripped us, and the only thing that was left was Jesus, right? Stripped us from experiences that we have in corporate worship settings. So when you go to church and you have that 30, 40, if you're a old school Pentecostal church, probably 2 hours of a corporate worship experience. Um, and that was stripped away from us in 2020 for a lot of us. We found ourselves um, having to try to experience something like that online, and it was really hard. It was really hard for me as well. But I've learned some golden nuggets in 2020 that I'm so thankful for, that are really shaping me right now. Um, Granted, I've been leading worship since I was 15 years old. I am 31 now, and I'm still learning about this. And I hope that I never stop. I hope that I never get to a place where I'm like, I know it all. I've arrived. I know the formula. I hope I never get there, because there's endless knowledge and endless wisdom and endless experiences when it comes to worship.
Um, you mentioned that there were some nuggets that you learned through this process. Before I jump into that, um, what was kind of like the hardest thing for you? I know you obviously were leading worship the whole time, and obviously that was just something that just flowed out of you. But what was kind of like, I don't want to say withdraw, but what was the challenges when it came down to that through 2020?
Yeah, there was a couple. One that really sticks out is as a worship leader. So being behind the mic, right? Um, I've always done it in a way where there's people, where we're interacting with one another physically, and having to lead worship through a camera and just trusting and having faith that something will be conveyed
That's true.
was really hard. Um, there was definitely that like faith element,
I agree with you.
like
Yeah.
that faith, like God, and it was actually kind of sobering as well because it just solidified for me that has nothing to do with me, has nothing to do with the band on the platform, or the lights, or the way that you set up a worship experience. It has everything to do with the mercy, first and foremost, of God and the Holy Spirit. Um, and really having to uh, have faith that God will do what He does. And all you have to do is just be obedient, you know? And so there was definitely that like humbling
Yeah.
moment for me. But it was hard. It was definitely hard. It was a lot of like going back to the drawing board to to ask God, like, what's my part in this? How can I be most effective? How can I set this situation up in such a way where I'm being a good steward of it? And it was hard. There were
I know, I
times,
agree, because I think for me as a communicator, um, many times we get like the people, is the energy of the room, changes the atmosphere. So when you're speaking into a camera, you're like, oh Lord, like, am I communicating right? Am
right?
I doing this right? Am I
Yes.
executing this correctly? So I agree. I feel like that was a very tough thing for me to learn until to this day right now. And I actually feel at this point I'm becoming more comfortable than before, but it's still like a struggle to do that. But I wanted to go back to this idea you and I were talking about before this, how um like with Sunday experiences being removed from 2020, um we kind of came into this place where we find out, many of us, we find it we find it very hard to worship through our week, to find a space, to find a room, to open the space in our week,
Yeah.
because we were so used to the Sunday experience that it became a crutch, like you
Yeah.
said, and we default to that, getting our fix on Sunday. And I think that through the week we didn't know how that spilled that into our week. So some of us, we were just not knowing what to do.
Yeah.
What was that experience for you in your own journey?
For those of you who don't know me, I can be very cynical. Everything to me is I'm that person that plays Among Us and I'm always writing sus. Everything is sus to me. And it's just a part of my personality. I have to take it to the cross daily. Because I'm always thinking like, man, I feel like I can almost know people's motivations. And 2020 was one of those years where God was like, girl, shut up. Like, you don't know the motivations of people's hearts. Only I do. And so at the beginning of March, when things had slowly started to shut down, and then churches started to close, and you had to figure out, okay, what are we going to do? We're going to go online. I was kind of like sitting back like, okay, I want to see what we're made of. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Kind of like, toma,
Hmm.
that was my reaction initially. And I was one of those people that was like, why are you fighting to open up the church again?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Why? I was like, actively, I was getting my
I
my,
remember.
my inner Gen Z,
Yeah. 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 You're being
like,
vocal about it.
and I started off that way. Um, and I started realizing as the time went on, and life was life, things started getting hard. I started noticing the difference in me spiritually, mentally. So if you don't suffer from cynicism, then you wouldn't know that it's kind of like it starts to eat away at your joy. It starts to eat away at your wonder. It starts to eat away at your hope, and just like that sense of, man, tomorrow's gonna be a good day because it's gonna be a good day because God promised it. It starts to eat away at that. Um, and I became closed down, and I was shutting down. My mood was changing. I just wanted to be home, kind of like there, but not there. And then I started to feel a nudge, like, okay, just listen to worship music, Raquel. Just put on some worship music and just start off your day that way, start off your morning that way. So I did. Um, and as soon as I started to do that, I started to feel like that shift in my spirit, if you would say. Um, and I realized that we need we need that. We need to be in moments of worship, however that looks like for you. So again, I don't want us to just pigeonhole the word worship.
Yeah.
If you are artistic, creative, if you
Yes.
are cerebral.
Yes.
Anything that you do that will cause you to be reminded of Jesus and cause others to be reminded of Jesus, that's worship, right? So for me, obviously, it's music. That's just the fastest way that I connect with God. And I started incorporating that in my daily routine. And so I went from this like cynicism, like, let's see what we're made out of, now that the church is closed, to like, can we open up now? Like, can we open back up? Because I
Yeah.
miss people.
Yeah.
I miss like corporate worship. I
Yeah.
miss leading worship and seeing people. That's one thing that just gets me really excited when I can actually see the transformation that's happening in the room.
Hmm.
So now I'm at my church, and I don't take it for granted anymore. I'm there and I'm present, and I'm just in awe and in wonder and just completely open to all of the possibilities that can happen in that moment.
Yeah. Man, I think you say so many things that I want to go, but it just I feel like the reality of what you just shared, like this process that you went through, it wasn't from one day to another. It was just a process and still to the journey, right now. And I think that I'm hoping that many of the students that listen to this, um, they no longer feel alone through this process, because I maybe loneliness and isolation can makes us feel like we're the only ones experiencing this.
Yeah.
And I think that this is such a like hope, that you open your own scars and saying, look, this is what I'm going through.
Yeah.
Even someone like you that have done it for 16 years,
Yeah.
going through this.
Yeah, there's no shame in saying like online just doesn't do it for me.
Yeah.
There's no shame in that. Um but at the same time, if there's one thing that I would love for all of us who are listening to this to take away from is that yes, corporate worship and just being in community with one another, it's very important. Like we need that. That's biblical, right? Like don't forsake the congregating
Yeah.
of the brethren. Like that's biblical. And God says it for a reason. But at the same time, we have an invitation to build up that personal worship time
Yes.
where you're not going to church anymore to get a fix, but rather you're going there as like a culmination of your week, right?
But
To celebrate all of the things that
love
you
it.
have been experiencing and seeing as you're walking with the Lord during your week. That's really what it is. I heard it said once, Sundays is our locker room experience
Mm.
for the game that's coming up this week.
Mm.
So if you're a sports oriented person, you know that the locker room is where you go and get hyped
Hype you
up
up.
and you get trained up and you learn your play and you're learning about one another as you're learning about your teammates because you know that you're going to get ready to go out and play and when you're playing, all of the things that you learned in your locker room are going to take like they're going to come to fruition,
Yeah.
you know? That's when it matters. So like church experiences in the sense of corporate gatherings, those are your locker room experiences. Don't let that be the highest moment of your spirituality. Cuz then I think that you're going to be the one that's kind of caught in a cycle of man, during the week I'm one person and when I get to church I'm like who I was created to be. I don't know if
Mhm.
you've ever felt that. There were,
All the time.
yeah, like I used to feel when I was leading worship, man, I'm living my purpose right now. Like
Yeah.
I am at the highest level of myself here. And then I would go home and then the week would start and it was like,
So I want to tap into that real quick. I know that we have a couple more minutes, but I know that like worshiping through our brokenness and through our inconsistencies, like I mean, obviously we were in proximity with each other, so and with other friends, and um, we get to see, the brokenness of people in our own brokenness. And I think some of us, we come from very legalistic churches where what they want is perfection rather than maturity. And I think that causes in us to feel shame, guilty the whole time, which some of us we give up. You know, it's like, well, this is not worth it. And I felt it many times being in Libya. I was like, I don't want to keep going. This is not worth it. I keep messing up. I keep falling into my old patterns. So, what do you do, or how do you navigate that as you keep trying to worship, as you keep trying to connect with God through your week? What was your experience like that?
How do I navigate my
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
brokenness?
Well, not your brokenness, but how do you navigate your desire to keep worshiping,
Yeah.
and your desire to connect with God, even though you have inconsistencies and
Yeah.
unhealthy patterns and so on and so on?
I think it's coming to the realization that God knows. God knows that we're broken. God knows that we have inconsistencies, that we have weaknesses. He knows what's going to trip us up.
Yeah.
He knows our areas where temptation is probably going to have the upper hand. He knows all of these things.
Yeah.
And 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 not actively pursuing those things, like definitely there's got to be a moment where you're like, okay, the word that's coming to my mind is like consecration,
Yeah.
like you're choosing consecration, and you're not just kind of flying by the skin of, what's that phrase, like the skin of your teeth, because God's gonna forgive me, right? Or on the other spectrum, you don't even want to like do anything because
Yeah.
you feel so far away from God. And I just
Yeah.
want to say, I want to tell you, if you're that person that you feel so far away from God right now, and that whatever you do won't ever measure up, like that's a lie of the enemy.
Yep.
And that's the accuser of your soul trying to like stifle your praise. So just know that we're all broken. Like we're all dealing with things
Yeah.
on a daily basis. And for me, what's changed for me is that I bring those things to the cross now. I don't hide from him. I don't hide from the Lord. I'm just like real. I'm like, God, I'm struggling with this. Can you help me? I'm willing to see your perspective right now, because on my own strength, I can't. And that's when the word grace comes into action. Grace empowers us to win.
Yeah.
It's like that power from heaven that gives us the upper hand when we don't have the capacity in our humanity to do it. And we won't most of the time,
Yep.
right? And so I think it's so freeing to know that you have a Heavenly Father who knows all of these things and is willing to give you the grace to win. He's not expecting you to be perfect already. He's like, no, I'm not asking you to have it all put together. I'm going to give you the grace to win. And even that awareness of like, man, God is so good, it helps me worship him. Because if this book is so good, it's called The Worship Architect. And it says, we don't initiate worship. God initiates worship. He's the initiator of worship. So when we think about a good God, the only logical response is to worship him. We can't manufacture it. We can't do it on our own. And so if you're having a week that's hard, it's full of whatever, you fill in the blank, just think about how good God is, and you'll begin to release the river of praise that's already inside you. Because you were meant to worship. That's in your DNA. You were meant to worship.
Yeah, I think gratitude is a huge piece of it that I think we take it for granted. I think it sounds very like hippie, like gratitude, like no, but gratitude is a huge thing, like, but as we close, Raquel, any last thoughts that you want to share with the students? Anything that you would like to communicate to them?
I want to say just how proud I am of you guys for choosing to still be a part of a place like LABI in such hard and tumultuous times. Like, you guys are the cream of the crop, and I pray that God would just reveal himself throughout your week, that it wouldn't be something that's routine or boring, but it would be exciting. I pray that God would open your hearts to see wonder and the beauty that exists in the community of believers, and just as you being a child of God.
Family, Raquel Vega, thank you so much for being with us.
You're having me.
Hopefully we can have you soon again. And family, hopefully you can get nuggets from this conversation that can help you in your day life. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful just to have you here in this conversation. Family, we love you. See you soon.